This is Armin, 2 years after Sarajevo was cut off from the rest of the world. He knows this street better than his own home. It might look ordinary, but it's one of the most dangerous places on Earth at that moment. He needs to reach the other side of the road, and timing is everything. In this city, even crossing the road has become a test of survival. Sarajevo had already been trapped for more than 1,400 days. The city was struck by an average of 300 shells every day, with the heaviest days reaching nearly 3,000 impacts. No school, hospital, or market stayed untouched. Life was measured in short pauses between explosions, moments when people dared to move, knowing the delay likely signaled the enemy was reloading. In Sumerian, one of the earliest written languages, the word often translated as freedom literally meant return to mother, a simple idea of release and going back to safety. In Sarajevo, that meaning felt painfully real. Across the city, mothers waited in dark hallways for their sons to return from water runs, front lines, or from streets like the one Armin was crossing. The siege made headlines for years. The shelling, the summits, the broken ceasefires. The headlines were rarely about lunch. This part is about lunch, and heat, and the 50 meters of open road between a person and a loaf of bread. This is Nermina. She stands in a kitchen that doesn't resemble a kitchen anymore. The stove is cold metal, the window is taped to stop drafts, and the room smells of smoke from the makeshift heater. In the pot in front of her, a thin soup quietly bubbles, if it can even be called soup. Before serving, she lifts a spoon to her lips. She isn't checking for taste. There is none. She is checking consistency, trying to decide if she has to add more water so the meager portion lasts one more day. Nobody in Sarajevo really believed it would come to this. This was the city people held up as proof that it could work, that Muslims, Catholics, Orthodox Christians, and Jews could live in the same neighborhood, with a mosque, a church, and a synagogue a few minutes apart. They called it the Jerusalem of Europe, and meant it kindly. It was, in miniature, what Yugoslavia was supposed to be: Orthodox Serbs, Catholic Croats, and Muslim Bosniaks living mixed together, which is part of why, even as it began, people kept waiting for someone to come and stop it. The city's weakness had nothing to do with who lived in it. Sarajevo sits in a narrow valley along the river, closed in by the nearby mountains. They had always been the gentle part of life. Before the fighting even started, artillery had been dug into those hills, pointed down at the streets. When the shooting began in April 1992, a ring some 60 kilometers around closed over the city. Cutting it off took almost no time at all. Within a week, the markets were empty, and the shops that had sold meat and flour were bare rooms with the glass blown out. After that, most of what came in came by air, on UN flights into the airport, and it was never close to enough. The rations were thin and low in vitamins, and for long stretches, a typical adult lived on something like 1,300 to 1,500 calories a day. So people improvised. Bread became flour and water. Soup became bones, then the same bones again. Anything that could be sold was sold. Anything that could be eaten was traded for. When the streets went quiet, people went out to the parks and courtyards and dug for dandelion roots and wild greens. One ration became notorious: cans of meat stamped Ikar, old and heavy and so dense with fat that people could barely keep it down. What was actually in them nobody could say, which mattered in a city where many people were Muslim and would not eat pork. The story on the street was that even the strays sniffed at it and walked away. The first winter was the hardest. Everything was short. People cooked what they could from airdropped pasta and powdered milk, and the parks were dug up and planted with vegetables. The hunger, it turned out, was not the worst of it. The worst was hiding it. Parents went without, so the children would not. This is Igor. He wakes up with his breath turning white in the air, even though he's still under 3 blankets. His apartment was warm in winters before the siege, but once the heating plant shut down, every home in the city fell below comfort level. The cold settles into everything. Floors feel like ice, and windows taped or covered with plastic barely slow the wind. He puts on 2 sweaters and a wool hat before he even sits up. Many families did the same, layering clothes because real heat no longer existed. In the living room stands the family's most valuable object, a metal barrel cut open and turned into a stove. It isn't elegant, but it keeps hands from going numb. What they ran out of in the end was fuel. No gas, no heat in the pipes, no wood, and no way out of the city to go and find any. So they burned what they had. The cold was not just weather. It was a thing that wore you down, day after day. The power would go for days at a time, and inside the apartments, ice set in the cups and frost climbed the walls like something growing. You heat water on a stove beaten out of scrap metal. You wash your face with fingers that have stopped feeling. When the pipes freeze, you carry your cans to the public pump, and the way there is long and open and watched. And the cold makes you hungrier, because a freezing body spends what little you give it just to keep itself alive. To keep a fire, you fed it your own home. The chairs went first, then the shelves, then the floorboards, then the books you used to love. When the furniture was gone, people walked out and cut down the trees in the courtyards and the parks. None of it lasted. An hour of warmth, if that, and then the room went cold again, and you began the whole thing once more. The winter of 1993 is the one people still talk about. It got cold enough that some could not leave their homes at all. The ones who went out looking for wood did not all come back, and some, by the accounts of those who were there, did not survive the cold inside their own walls. This is Armin again. He stands at the edge of a wide boulevard once used by trams and shoppers, a place that once felt ordinary and alive. Now the street is open, exposed, and silent, and that silence makes it far more dangerous than it appears. He waits without moving, listening for the sharp crack he knows too well. When he hears it, he doesn't flinch. He waits for the short, heavy quiet that follows. A quiet that usually means someone is reloading, and in that narrow window, he prepares to move. He steps out low, never running in a straight line, weaving through burned-out cars, shattered bus stops, and piles of debris. People here learned early that predictability was dangerous. During the siege, this boulevard became known as Sniper Alley, a name spoken quietly because everyone understood what it meant. It never appeared on a map, but people didn't need a label. From the tall buildings along the Holiday Inn area to the slopes held by Serb forces above the city, the entire stretch was exposed, and UN reports later described it as one of the most dangerous urban routes of the war. This road sat on Sarajevo's main east-west axis, which meant civilians had to cross it to reach hospitals, water points, bakeries, and aid distribution centers. Journalists from The Guardian and the Associated Press wrote that thousands moved through here daily, even though snipers had a clear view of the boulevard from multiple angles. UN personnel who were stationed nearby often tried to reduce the risk for civilians. Peacekeepers stood at crossings, signaled when it seemed safer to move, and in some cases escorted small groups across when fire temporarily eased. Their presence didn't eliminate the danger, but for many residents it provided a moment of structure in a place where rules no longer existed. People adapted with methods that made sense only in a city under siege. Some memorized the broken walls and burned out shops that offered a second of cover. Others carried small mirrors to check corners without exposing their heads. Families waited for cloudy weather so shadows were harder to track. Residents used scrap metal, doors, or trash bins as makeshift shields. pushing them ahead while moving between buildings. Even under the threat, people in Sarajevo kept their routines alive. Children carried water cans before school. Parents waited for the quiet moments between shots to reach bakeries or aid stations. Nothing about this was normal, yet continuing these simple actions became a way to hold the city together. Every day, the same pattern repeated. Check the street, listen for distant echoes, wait for a safe second, then move with purpose. Even the most basic tasks became statements of resilience, and Sarajevo refused to stop.